then it'll be officially go time. One sec. Oh wow, there we go. Come here. Okay, there it goes. Oh, it's actually because I did this earlier. It's all taken care of. All right, are you guys ready? Let's rock. Welcome everyone to episode 1046 of Just Joshing. This is a special episode here. I am with the Heritage Anthology writers. I might be the adult in the room, and I'm a little scared of that. Before we get started, before we fully commit, I want to introduce the panel here of esteemed writers and creators and comics here. Let's go, Deborah. We'll start with you. Then we'll go to Lorraine, Rosemary, and Rosina. We're just going to do it in that order.
Okay, hi. Thank you so much. I'm Deborah DJ Stevenson. I write under a whole bunch of pen names, so just go to bluetricksbooks.com to see my bibliography. But mainly what I write is science fiction and fantasy, which is why I really loved this idea because it's science fiction, it's alt history, it's feminism, and the rest of this group, all these fantastic writers, they've graciously agreed to jump on board with me. So we're just going to have all kinds of awesome stories that are all going to be thematically similar, but also really, really different.
Lorraine.
My name is Lorraine Anderson. I actually put the J in there because otherwise I get mixed up with a nature writer. So it's under Lorraine J Anderson, and that's my LorraineJAnderson.com. I actually started doing fan fiction many, many years and got tired of that, and fan fiction is sort of nowadays. So I started my own I write mostly fantasy, and the last one I wrote was a murder mystery.
Awesome. Rosemary.
Oh, hi, I'm Rosemary Jones. I write under Rosemary Jones, and I'm the Rosemary Jones who writes media tie-in fiction. I've had a few books out with Wizards of the Coast for Forgotten Realms, and more recently I've been doing alt history for Arkham Horror. If you hit a Rosemary Jones who writes Bermuda travel guides, that's not me, but oh, how much I wish it was.
And last but certainly not least, Rasana.
Hi, my name is Rasana Atreya, and I worked in tech for many years. I was a Unix sysadmin, and then I had a baby, and babies are not compatible if the network goes down at 3 a.m. So then I was forced to switch, and I started out freelancing for newspapers, and then once graduated to novels, and now I write women's fiction. I've never written a sci-fi before, so this is going to be my first.
All right, so let's go to the second point. So how did you all come together? What was the secret origin story?
Yeah, it was basically, I asked a bunch of friends I knew who were crazy enough to say yes. And then we decided we wanted more. We wanted broader voices. So we cast a wider net and asked some other people. One of the very, very first decisions we had to make was this going to be, the theme was set. It was improving women's lot in history and society and the culture. And this alt history anthology, turning points would have a positive and permanent effect. So my biggest question at the beginning, because I could see pros and cons of going either way, was, did we invite men? And for this anthology, even though there's a ton of awesome guys out there, I decided we wanted it to only be women. And hopefully this will be a very successful anthology and we can do more. And the guys can play in the sandbox too.
All right, so to the rest of you, I'll start again. We'll go in reverse order. Rasana, what intrigued you about the coming into this?
So I've been thinking on and off about writing sci-fi, and I've just never gotten into it. And when Sue Quinn contacted me, And I'm also very interested in climate fiction. So I said, maybe I can combine it together and see where it takes me. So
All right. We're going to go to Rosemary.
It was basically I got to do a historical superhero matchup that the minute I heard the theme, I went, I want to write about Victoria Woodhull Martin, who was the first woman to run for president in 1872, and I am an enormous Nellie Bly fan. I have collected Nellie Bly memorabilia for years. For those who don't know who she was a reporter who went around the world in less than 80 days in the 19th century to prove a woman could do it and do it alone. And so I wanted to have Victoria make a second run for president, and I wanted Nellie to be her campaign manager. So the story is going to be Victoria for president, says Nellie Bly.
And Lorraine.
Well, I've known Deborah for some years now. We met at Shore Leave, the Shore Leave convention. I just thought it would be interesting. It took me forever to come up with a concept, though, and January is a very, very busy month for me. So she was probably sweating bullets waiting for me to come back with my concept. I work for an accounting firm and payroll. But I finally thought of Shakespeare's wife. What if she wrote the plays instead of William? And then I thought, well, Queen Elizabeth I was reigning right around that time. So what if Elizabeth I was patron of William Shakespeare? So what if if Elizabeth was also patron of Anne Hathaway, Shakespeare's wife? And what would happen if Anne Hathaway started to get female actors, because they did not have any female actors back then. So, it's starting, the concept is still evolving right now.
Well, it's an irony, right? Because Shakespeare's plays, I mean, when he had women characters, they were played by men.
Oh yeah.
Right. So the ironic part of that definitely even appeals to me. So you got a cool idea. It'll be interesting to see where you go with it.
Yeah, now that I'm through working, maybe I get a chance to think about it more.
Yeah. And Rosemary, that actually sounds very interesting. I hope you guys don't mind. My favorite real historical thing with how badass women could be were the night witches from the Russian World War II.
Mhm.
I love the Night Witches. I've played around with a couple things with that group and with female aviators. So yeah, there's an incredible story there for people who don't know. They were the Russian women who flew combat missions.
Yeah,
and generally in the worst planes because they didn't have the night.
Actually, see, you're not doing that justice. There were wooden planes.
Yeah.
So they couldn't fly them in the day. The reason they were called the night witches was because they weren't allowed. If they flew in the day, they would have died. They would have got killed. But at night, you couldn't see them, and they realized that really early on, and they terrorized the Nazis. They terrorized them.
They really did. They were, but the Russian. I had an opportunity to see an incredible display about the Noctex and the Night Witches at our Museum of Flight here in Seattle. And yes, I've been wildly intrigued by them. There's been a couple of good books out about them. There's a good comic graphic novel series out about them. But yeah, there's always room for people to play with them.
Yeah, I did an alternate history take on them. I have a Night Witch trying to kill evil versions of Knights of the Round.
Oh, there you go. That's perfect.
Yes. Very fun stuff.
Yeah, no, love the Night Witches. Just fascinating and fabulous and really great.
Oh,
yeah.
They're fun.
What they accomplished with the worst possible equipment is just amazing.
They were the most, for those wondering, they were the most successful Russian fleet. They had the fewest casualties in the 4 years they operated. Sadly, did not get the credit for it while they were in action. But that's another story for another day. probably the most badass women I know in history, but definitely up there. Some of the most badass women I know in history for sure.
Yeah, there's if you're a mad book collector like me, there is actually a series of oral histories that were taken when the women were still alive. Most of them, of course, have passed away because they were World War II veterans. But you can track it down still on, on sites like eBay and Amazon, and it's really good. I really recommend it.
I'll have to pick that up for my own reference at some point. So, all right. So, I guess I got your origin story. I got stories you have come up with. So, I'm going to ask Deborah. So, this is your brainchild.
Hmm.
So, I'm going to ask this. So, why science fiction?
Because of the way the world is today. I mean, I'm I'm a firm optimist, and I believe it's better than it's ever been, but that does not mean there's not tons of room for improvement, especially in the status of women worldwide. So it unfortunately it is science fiction to show a different condition. Um, and all alt history is basically science fiction, the what if thing, and going into the future. So yeah, but just for example, similar, kind of along the same lines as the Night Witches, the story I'm doing, this group might, but not many people know who the Mercury 13 are.
Mhm.
I don't know
So
who they are. So, educate me.
okay. The Mercury
Mhm.
13 in the 1960s were a group of women pilots, many, if not all, of whom had flown in World War II, because the US Air Corps had women taxiing and ferrying planes. Jacqueline Cochran had, she assembled there were over 1,000 women who flew for the US Army. Um, the Mercury 13 were contemporaries with the Mercury 7, the men who got to become astronauts. And the 13 women took all the same physical and mental tests and passed, but never got to fly. And there were congressional hearings and national drama. And so the crux of my story is, what if they'd flown?
Hmm.
What would have happened? So that there's the whole science fiction angle, sort of historic science fiction. I mean, it's NASA, it's Gemini, Mercury, Apollo, but the science fiction just gives the writer so much more freedom and opens it up so much more. You can have anything happen.
Mhm.
So that's why it ended up science fiction, but a very grounded science fiction. I mean, there's supposed to be what if, but very believable what if. Not, oh, that would never happen, that, yeah, I can't imagine it, that makes no sense. So that's how we ended up with, alt history and science fiction.
Okay. So, so let's see. I've asked everybody first, but Rosemary, I gotta ask it.
Oh.
I again, I want to make
Hmm.
sure everybody gets their fun time in the sun here. So, so you sound, because she mentioned grounded and historical, and you mentioned like a superhero kind of thing.
Yeah, I'm a superhero writer too, but yeah, I mean, I think that the thing is that we sometimes forget, and this has been the fun I've been having with the series I do for Arkham Horror. It's set in the 1920s in Arkham, which is a totally fictional town, which has a little problem with extraterrestrial creatures and horrors and shadows. And if you play the card game Arkham Horror or you play the board game Arkham Horror, you'll know what I'm talking about.
Love the board game.
Yeah.
Pain setup,
So,
but I love the
so
board game.
yeah. So one of the fun things I've had for the last 4 years in writing in this setting is in the 1920s, there was a phenomenal number of women working all over the place. They'd just gotten the vote. They were really ramping up and going out into public life. And we tend to forget that sometimes. And so my first Arkham Horror book was about silent movie crew makes movie in haunted house. And the women are working. There's an actress, but there's also a scriptwriter who's a woman, which was really true of the silence. Almost over half the scriptwriters were women at that time in the movies. I have women working behind the camera as they were. There's lots of documented instances of women being kind of the business minds behind stuff. My second book gets more into that with Deadly Grimoire. I also bring in the aviatrix from the game, Winnie, but Winnie's very based on a number of female aviatrixes or female flyers that were around in the 1920s. She's trying to compete in an airplane derby and can't because the men won't let her, which was very true in the final derby that was right at the end of the 20s was the Powder Puff. Well, it was called the Powder Puff Derby, which is when the women pilots got to fly across country in the races. And pretty much every famous female flyer you know of was in it, including Amelia Earhart. And one woman died in this cross country, but, a bunch of them made it too. And if you look at their lives are so fabulous, fantastic, and go in so many directions after that. You could write a whole series of books where you don't have to get too fantastical about the fiction and have a really good story. So that was kind of my idea. And then again, to go back to what I'm doing right now with Victoria, I mean, a lot of people have heard of Victoria Woodhull or sort of know that she ran for president, but she is a huge interesting, complex character in herself. I'm having really fun kind of delving into her bio and figuring out what kind of things I'm going to pull forward for her. But yeah, she was the first woman stockbroker. She and her sister were working on Wall Street. They launched magazines. They were very seen as very socialist. They were um, right on top of the debate about birth control, which heaven knows that one hasn't gone away. They were a couple of scandalous women who shook things up in New York society, had some very high society connections, which we'll get into in the story, and may have even actually gotten paid to leave the country by some high society folks. And that was why they actually both Tennessee and Victoria essentially retired. They weren't that old, but they went off to England and they established lives there and married there and never came back. And so in this case, I'm just bringing them back 30 years later to do one more round of trouble rousing. And Nellie was the
It's
same. Yeah.
No, I was just gonna say it's so interesting you mentioned women in film, and you made the statement that there's a lot that real women actually did, and that is just so true. And unfortunately, history gets erased. It gets forgotten by a lot of people. Everyone knows about World War II aces, but how many people know the Night Witches?
Yeah.
Everyone knows about the inception of NASA and Gemini and Mercury, but not everyone knows 13 women passed the same tests. And the beginning of Hollywood, the studios, I mean, MGM was with Mary Pickford.
Yeah,
It's
United. Yeah, she's United Artists. She founded United Artists so she could keep
it's so,
control of her image.
exactly. So many
Yeah.
things start out egalitarian, like also the computer industry in the 80s. And the further they evolve, the more women get pushed out. So that's another major reason for, I mean, like you said, it's not really alt history. So much of it is real that people don't know.
Yeah. Well, I will say the tentacles in Arkham maybe not real, but
Well,
I have a lot of fun bringing those folks in, and that's why I said I always like to kind of like everybody. My editor loves this. I sort of started this with my Arkham books, but if you pick up any of those, you'll find at the end of it, there's usually a little afterwards by me that's like, no, no, this part is real. This is real history. These women flew, and this is where they went, and this woman did, wrote this book, and this woman did this thing in Hollywood, or I just got finished with a thing about female bootleggers, and I'm like, yeah, there were real female bootleggers. Al Capone wasn't the only one out there. There were all sorts of women who were smuggling booze and pouring drinks, and we're doing some really different from the way the men handled it. They often did a lot of, I mean, there's a lot about the woman who ran bootlegging in Harlem, and a lot of the money went back into support social programs, and she was really trying to essentially elevate her community. And I know some people have started writing about that, and there's some really great BIPOC fiction out there about that. And I'm just really excited to see folks, as I said, the more you dig back in history, the less work you have to do making stuff up. So that's where I kind of come from with this stuff, is I tend to go back and I go, oh, this is really cool. And maybe I can bring this forward a little bit and just add a little glitter, a little polish to it. And
Exactly.
Josh, you are muted.
Oh,
There you are.
No, I wasn't. Okay.
There you go.
Truth is stranger than fiction. I'll be louder because I'm
Yeah.
good at the loud thing. So, no, it's like I think like it's just a brief comment on today's time, then we'll just go back and talk about stories. We have so much access to information today. I mean, the details are often missed because I think we are in an age where we almost have too much information. It's almost, I actually had this conversation in an earlier podcast. It's almost like we all have a little bit. Remember, like Odin at his later thing was the god of wisdom, could see everything.
Yeah.
Right. Omniscience
Never
is a
want
curse.
that.
No one wants that. But we're in an interesting age because if we look, we have access to all this information. It's almost like, wow, where do we begin? I think it can overwhelm us, and we miss a lot of details. Right. Back into the when things were happening, it was easier to make things go quiet because there was no one to know. Now it's the opposite problem. Everybody is screaming at you. So now you're like, what do I pay attention to?
Mhm.
Well, that's why people like these fabulous ladies are so much fun to work with, because that's, I think, where fiction and historical fiction comes in, is we can hone in on something. And as I said, we can glam it up a bit and bring it forward, and I hopefully send you down the same rabbit holes we go down, looking these things up. But that, I think, is, I'm a huge consumer of historical fiction, and I love that genre, which can be everything from fantasy to romance to mystery to terror and horror. And it's just, all it means is it didn't happen right now. Sometimes when they classify something from the 1990s as historical fiction, I get a little queasy, but
Well, it's
but it's true. I mean, it's 30 years old at this point.
yeah. I mean, I was a kid at that point, but I
Yeah.
mean, I'm still kind of a kid now, but it's just a
Yeah.
different kind of kid.
Yeah.
But what I would say is it's important you find passions, and I think that's the way of filtering things out today is making people aware of your passions. I want to so we've talked a little bit. We'll get back to Lorraine. We kind of touched on a lot of the subjects of your story through the film stuff and stuff. So I want to just talk to Rasana first, real quick here. Talk about a little bit more about your story. What like get in detail, like what fascinated you about this?
So I grew up in India with two things. The first was the Green Revolution, which was a bit before my time. This was in the 1960s, but also in 1984 was the Bhopal gas tragedy. Union Carbide was this big corporation which had set up in Bhopal, and thousands of tons of gas escaped into the air, poisonous, toxic gas, and there wasn't information forthcoming, but like thousands of people were killed, and it's a generational thing. So people who were exposed to that gas continue to have during childbirth, and kids born with all kinds of diseases for a couple generations. And so my connection with Bhopal was that I was in Bhopal in 1981, and the tragedy happened in 84. So why we moved was because my mom died. So then my dad had to move us, and my grandparents raised us. So I was just thinking that But for the fact that my mom died, we would have been in Bhopal. And I guess maybe my mom dying was meant to be, because regardless, I don't know that we would have survived. But, that's more morbid. But the thing is that, so a lot of changes happened, and a lot of laws were passed, and some were followed, some were not. So I just want to do an alternate take on, what would have happened if we could have made progress along, actual progress. Because even when this thing happened, for years there was no payout, and later Dow Chemicals acquired Union Carbide, and even then the payout to the victims was not, it did not compensate them enough. And the thing is, a lot of people see, in America, everyone who's born, most people who are born get a social security, right? In India, it's happening now. Back then, that wasn't the case. You lived in your village, and that's the, those are the people who knew you. So there was no way for the government to track people, and so many people were not compensated. So all of this has been sort of going um, around in my mind, and I've been thinking of what a way to, what if progressive laws had been passed, and what if, some like, I'm thinking of this young woman who's taking charge, and going the way that India might have gone. And I'm sorry to be so vague, because I
Oh,
get,
it's okay.
No.
It's
no,
fascinating.
I can't plot. So when I start writing is when my characters tell me where to go. And so, and I haven't started writing the story yet. I've been sort of mulling it in the background, and that's why, yeah.
Yeah, it's really tricky because we want to entice people and we want to make people curious and like, we have to read those stories. So we have to get people really interested, but we can't give everything away or,
I
you
No,
think
know,
also I came in very late
no,
to that
it's fair. It's
apology.
fair.
So I apologize for that.
No, I think it sounds fascinating, and this is one of the
Hmm.
stories I'm really I do remember the disaster, and I'm really looking forward to seeing what your take on it, because you're right, it was a terrible tragedy at the time, and there's so much that could have been changed, and we seem to be heading back into a number of those kind of tragedies, so maybe it's a little bit of a warning too.
And what people don't seem to realize is more people were killed in Bhopal than in Chernobyl. And there was more of an environmental disaster from Bhopal than from Chernobyl. So,
Jeez.
just to put it
Yeah,
in perspective.
yeah.
Yeah.
No, I think it's a phenomenal thing to bring back forward.
yeah. I mean, people hear nuclear and they think boogeyman, not realizing that, Bhopal was every bit, well, I mean, far worse even
Yeah.
just from the numbers.
Mm-hmm.
But nuclear is such a boogeyman for some people. And I think it's a symptom, like you were talking about going back. There's I don't know if it's worldwide or not, but in the US there's an anti-science trend at the moment. And I mean, I've worked in the nuclear industry. It's not magic, it's not boogeyman and terrible. I mean, it's nuclear power is actually very safe. But people don't know, so people are afraid of what they don't know. And like you said, Chernobyl, that was in the headlines forever. And Bhopal definitely was when it happened, but everyone knows about Chernobyl now. And I think if you say Bhopal to some people, you have
Mhm.
to explain what it is,
The only
which
thing
isn't a good thing.
the only thing I would say is I'm not sure it's necessarily an anti-science thing, but more of an anti-authority thing. We do, as this current generation has, and right, I think rightfully so, um, has trust issues with authority, and I think that's to some degree that's been earned. The problem with that is since no one really trusts, it's hard to take something credibly. The other thing too, like to your point about Paul, I know about it until you just told me, right? Because the thing is, there are certain things that are that from a perception perspective that are always advertised a certain way. And then and it has been, and again, and this is part of the, I think, the whole anti-authority issue, I think more so than an anti-science one, and it's been perpetuated in such a way that people are sick of it. And what happens is what's happening now is everything is being re-questioned, but a lot of things are slipping through the cracks still, because like I said earlier, what's happening is there's so much information out there that the ability to discern what is or isn't, that's difficult for anybody, no matter how well educated you are, because it's just become such a big net, right? Where how much information is out there. So I would, that's the only thing I would actually say about that. But I mean, to that point, it sounds like I wish I could say I haven't heard stories like yours, Rasana, because it's far more common than I think we all would like to admit. And it's unfortunate. It's just the way the world has gone in the last, I'd say, 10, 20 years. But it sounds like a really good story and sounds really, really, really worth telling. My question, I do have a follow-up question for you, though, and this is like the personal element to you. It seems like you're the kind of person that kind of looks back at some of the choices you've made in your life, and you kind of look at, maybe, if not necessarily, one would say what you said earlier was morbid, but in an odd way, it might have been a blessing in disguise for you, right? Because it prevented you from having a terrible thing happen. And sometimes I'm guilty of this too, is, well, if things had worked out differently, I wouldn't be the person I am today. Is that part of the fascination there?
Yes, yes, and I often think about that, and I've had so many opportunities and choices that I could make because I wasn't in Bhopal, that I am grateful to be where I am. For example, so I went on to study electrical engineering, and then I came to the US for my master's. And even that, in those days, it wasn't very common from women in India to travel alone and go to a foreign country for education. But that's what I wanted to do. And the other thing is, the other twist is, so in India, dowry is still a thing. And so most people save for the dowries of their daughters. And I told my father that I'm not the kind of person who needs a dowry. Please, help pay for my education, and I'm good. And that's what he did.
Yeah,
And that's where I am. So I'm here today because of that.
no, that's
Good.
That's great. I love that.
an interesting twist of fate for sure.
Very good.
It sounds like I would definitely like to read it when it's done, for sure.
Thank you.
All right, Miss Lorraine, we've explored the others. Let's explore you a little bit. So were you a big Shakespeare fan? Is this, or was it just the whole absurdity of the fact of male actors playing female lead characters back in the day?
Yeah,
Was it something else?
I don't know exactly why it came to my head, because I'm not terribly a big Shakespeare fan. I think I've heard the concepts that everybody else were doing, and I thought, well, let's try something different and something I might actually know something about. I was an English major in college, but that was a long time ago, so I don't know, it just came to my head. It's one of those things out of there.
I mean, I do appreciate the irony, and I'm very curious of what you'll actually do with it. So, I'm going to ask this. I'm going to ask. Sorry, I'm just going to ask this of you, and then we'll move on to the next thing. So it sounds to me like you've had a career. And maybe I'm wrong on this. If I'm wrong on this, just correct me. It sounds to me like you've had a career, and now you're kind of putting your toes back into the creative realm. Is that accurate?
I don't know if I'd call it necessarily career. I've been a bookkeeper for many years, and that wasn't what I started out in, but that's what I ended up And I started in writing and I wrote off and on for many, many years. And for about 6 years, I couldn't do much because my parents, my dad passed away and my mom was in a nursing home. So, you know, by the time you get home from that, it's you're gone.
Yeah. No, it's
So
that's
no,
tough.
I'm trying to get back into it and write, you know, I'm just trying.
Are you having fun?
When I get sit down and write, I do have fun.
All right. Well, I don't know you very well, Miss Lorraine, so this is I'm going to give you a wish, if nothing else.
Okay.
It says, I hope you get to enjoy the ride, however much time you had to enjoy it, because
Oh yeah.
it sounds to me like you deserve to play more, and I hope you get that opportunity.
Well, I should retire, but I don't see myself retiring for a while.
No.
Yeah.
And that's fine. That's why I'm wishing you. That's why I'm giving you this wish. It sounds to me.
Yeah.
It sounds again. I don't know you very well. It sounds to me like you have a lot you're doing, and I
Mm-hmm.
don't think you're. It's let's say burdensome, but you do. It is a lot of your time. And someone like you deserves to have fun. That's just a wish. It's just a personal thing. So.
Well, the other thing I do is music. I sing in the church choir and I've sung on local stage.
Awesome. That's really cool.
Yeah. So
Solo on stage, or it's choir there too?
I've sung both.
Okay.
I've done both.
That's awesome. That's awesome. All of you on some level, I would love to have it individually as guests somewhere down.
Thank you.
Yeah. No, I think
Thank
you'd all be fun. Okay. So we talked about your stories. We talked about your anthology. Okay. So we said science fiction. So I'm going to sound verbally really dumb here. Prose, comics, both, neither. What like the presentation?
Prose.
Prose.
Mm-hmm.
For this story, prose, but again, I'd love to write comics. I read them all the time.
I'm asking that because of Deborah Dottie, because when I interviewed her, it was she's a big comic person. So
Yeah.
Yeah, no. This anthology is prose.
Okay. Yeah.
So, but I mean, heck, if it would branch out, that would be wonderful.
All right.
Yeah.
All right. So I'm asking the big pipe dream question here to Deborah here. This is Deborah. Where do you want to see this go? Like, what would be like if it all magically worked out? Where would you love to see this go?
I'd love it to become a series actually, because it's just such a wide open canvas. You know, there's 15 authors in this anthology. All of the stories are vastly different. Just from you can tell that from the small group here. And I mean, I would just love it to go viral. And, you know, people would, oh, but what about this? Oh, but what about that? And, you know, it would just be wonderful to have more anthologies come out because each one would be so very different. Um, just to give a teaser, a nod to our co-writers who couldn't be here, some of the other stories. Someone's writing about Boudica. Someone is writing about Hypatia. Someone is writing about Vikings and how they relate to current day football. And when I say football, I don't mean American football. I mean
I got it.
what we would call soccer. Someone's writing about Joan of Arc. Someone's writing about the Chippewa and the Metis in the Northwest, and what would happen if a battle with the Canadian troops had gone differently. Anna Komnene, Josephine Baker. I mean, they're all over the chronological and geographical map. But I mean, 15 in all of history is, I mean, it's not even a drop in the bucket. I mean, it's barely a molecule of water. So if this would catch on and grow, that would be wonderful.
All right. That's fair. Then that's where it goes. It's going to start one Kickstarter at a time, basically. So again, I'm gonna talk about. So we talked some stories here. Okay, I'm gonna ask a fun. Okay. I should ask this before we start because I know some of you haven't finished your stories. Are you guys reading everybody else's stuff when it's done?
Oh, most of us haven't started them yet.
Yeah. Okay. Fair enough. Fair enough. Okay.
I mean,
so,
some may have, but no, a lot of people haven't started them yet.
Okay. Then I'll ask this: of all the concepts you've heard, okay, you guys can't choose your own. I'm making this really evil. This is an evil question. I'm just warning you guys up front. Right? Deborah's allowed to be out because she's the editor. So I'll let her sit this one out. But the other three I'm gonna hit you. What is your favorite concept you've heard that's not your own? Based on the ones
Night
you are
Witch.
aware of.
Night Witches. I just loved it.
So
Yeah.
when it's over, maybe I'll send you a piece of my novel that I have out there right now. It starts it up in a dead end bar in Vancouver and goes from there. It gets wild. So, yeah. So that's it. No. So how about you, Rosemary? How about you, Lorraine?
Okay, I'll go over. I have to say, I mean, when Deborah said, I think when you were first pitching the thing, they said, oh, we've got this story about Vikings and football, and it's the other kind of football. I went, ooh, okay, yeah, I want to hear about these women. So I thought that was very cool.
Yeah.
But then I just heard about the Bhopal story, and I'm like, oh yeah, no, I want to read that. And I've heard about and Shakespeare. I love Shakespeare, and we don't actually know that William wrote his plays. This has been one
No.
of the great controversies of English literature. So I'm willing to make the case for Anne Hathaway, and I can't wait to see what Lorraine does with that. So yeah, I want to read them all.
Well, I'm not going to try to recreate the language. So
No.
It'll be fun.
yeah, it's a toss up between the Night Witches and the Gemini astronauts for me.
Not to be a stickler, but you guys know the Night Witches is not in this book.
Yeah. That's my concept.
We would need both. We need no offense because they're awesome.
Yeah,
We all
I
love
know.
them. But
I know, but
No,
still,
I mean, I'm not going to dodge the question actually, although this is, I mean, all of them. They just all sound so wonderful. I can't wait to read each and every one of them. And if there's a volume 2, the Night Witches would be awesome. Just,
Well,
one of the many things that we could hit on.
If you make to a volume 2, just give me a shout. I have a great concept for you, I swear. But anyways, right? But
Yeah, get that funding in for volume 1.
Yeah,
Josh, there's an opening.
Yeah. So so when does your campaign officially launch?
Okay. Our campaign launches next Thursday, and we're launching it in conjunction with a convention in Pikesville, Maryland called Farpoint. It's one I go to every year. So the campaign will run from February 8th to, I believe, March 13th. So it'll be just a tiny bit over 30 days. I think it's exactly 32 days or something like that because February is a short month. The Kickstarter is beginning of February to beginning of March. The book will publish at Shore Leave in the last week of July. And that, as Lorraine already mentioned, Shore Leave is a big convention. This year, the next one, it's in Lancaster. Both of these used to be in Hunt Valley, but they have both needed to relocate. So we're launching, it's online, but Pikesville. And then the publication, the book will come out. There'll be a launch party in Lancaster, PA at Shore Leave. And of course, after the Kickstarter, it'll be available on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, ebook, hardcover, paperback.
Okay.
And if the Kickstarter does well enough, one of our stretch goals, we actually want to have an illustration for each story. The artist has already agreed to do that. So that would just be really fantastic.
Can you say who the artist is, or do you want to wait until
The artist is a wonderful person named Kat Hardy. And she also does art for Shadowrun, in case anyone happens to know that
I do.
RPG name.
I do actually. I GM Shadowrun games sometimes.
There you go. She
Yeah,
does a lot of their art, and
that's
she's
really cool.
absolutely wonderful. In addition to being awesomely talented, she is just an incredible person and an absolute joy to work with. So she's doing her cover, and if we get the stretch goal in, she'll be doing a black and white, because the books we're not going to do a color interior, but she'll be doing a black and white drawing for every story.
That's
So
awesome.
we really need to fund the stretch goals.
Okay,
There you go.
so for now, let's talk about the campaign itself a little bit more. So are you offering hardcovers, soft covers, ebooks? Any
Mhm.
special things about the books on Kickstarter that need to be mentioned?
A lot of stuff is still in development. We will have things like um a lot of us have other titles, so add-ins and stretch goals. There'll be a lot of ebooks offered, some hard copy offered. One thing, not as a stretch goal, but as an add-in, we're looking at t-shirts, and the heritage, the shifting swirling heritage logo will be on the front. The book cover will be on the back. So there's just recipes to correspond to each character and era. And one of our members, Diana Botsford, she's the one writing about Boudica. She is a master chef, basically, and she is going to give sourdough, like basically a lesson how to do a sourdough starter and how to bake from it and keep it and things like that. So there's a ton of stuff in store for the Kickstarter. We don't even have all of it set yet.
Okay.
So
Now,
everyone will have to check it out.
no, it's all fair. I figured since you're very close to launch, I figured if there's anything you want to add. All right. I think this has been relatively civil. I think I did a good job, or you guys just did a better job. I'll
You
let you
did
guys go.
great.
Yeah, a better job here. Um, okay. What I want to do, we're going to do this in descending order. So, Rasana, we're going to start with you, and we're going to work our way up. I don't want okay, I'm gonna make this like an official invite to all of you individually, because this is I would love to get the opportunity, if you guys have other things you'd like to promote, discuss at some point down the road. You guys are welcome to come on my show individually, and that'd be great. So what I'm going to ask for to wrap this up, I want you guys to tell me, go full circle, tell a little bit about yourself and where people can find you, and then we'll wrap it, and then we'll close up with Deborah, and then we'll wrap up with the Kickstarter. Does that sound like a master plan, everybody?
Sure.
I almost know what I'm doing, I swear. So Rosanna, you go first. You go first,
Okay.
and then we'll go to Rosemary, then Joe, then Lorraine, and then we'll close with Deborah.
I am at rasanaatreya.com. And actually, if you Google me, I'm pretty much everywhere, because that's the only name in the world. And also, I happen to be one of India's self-publishing pioneers. So Amazon flew me to New Delhi for the launch of the Kindle and all of that. That's why I'm all over the place.
That's awesome.
Did you say something?
I said Rosemary.
Oh, okay. Sorry, I didn't miss that. So I'm Rosemary Jones. You can find me at rosemaryjones.com. My latest book in the Arkham Horror series is The Bootlegger's Dance, which is a Christmas eldritch adventure with spooky stuff and a lot of cool references to 1920s music. My next book out will be for the collective Cobalt City, which is a superheroes fantasy series being written by a number of Northwest authors. Mine will be Wrecker of Engines. It's coming out in April for the 20th anniversary of this project.
Wayne, how about yourself? How can people find you?
Well, I'm at Lorraine J Anderson.com. You probably see my name on the screen. I just didn't add the J.
Yeah.
I have Well, my last book, like I say, was a murder mystery, and it was basically more about my life because I've worked at a lumberyard. I've also worked at a lumberyard for 36 years. And so the murder mystery was about a female taking over the lumberyard, and the lumberyard industry around here in Michigan is very male dominated. But my next book will be I would call it a supernatural murder mystery type. Um, the CPA is being haunted by ghosts, and they tell him to do things through his assistant, who can actually see ghosts. So he solves various mysteries.
Very cool. All right, check all these ladies out individually, but we are here to launch a Kickstarter. So I'm going to close things out with Deborah here. So Deborah, tell the world why
Yes.
you rock.
Yes, definitely. Please follow our Kickstarter. We think this anthology is going to be absolutely awesomely fantastic. Everyone will enjoy it. We just need people to back it and read it. You can find me. I hopefully this is showing up on the screen. bluetrixbooks.com. And then I am on Facebook as Rigel Elore. That's what a lot of my writing is under. My science fiction is under Rigel Elore, some of the fantasy as well. Um, I've I have another series, The Vagabond's Adventures. They're two multimillionaires roaming the countryside in a double-decker RV, which is a interesting concept that I like anyway. I wrote a hockey novel about the first woman to play in the NHL. I have a mystery romance out there that parallels Phantom of the Opera. It's set behind the scenes on Broadway. So I'm all over the map, even though most of it is science fiction and fantasy. Next book out will be book 6 of the Sorcery and Steel series. That will also debut in July at Shore Leave, assuming we get it done in time. But that is the plan. It's partway through right now. So there's just always tons of irons in the fire. But at the moment, the top of the list is this anthology, Shifting Swirling Heritage, with the HER capitalized. And Josh, you said you're going to put up the link.
Oh,
If anyone goes,
the link. I've been putting up links for all of you guys for the last few minutes.
oh,
It's
great,
up
thank
there.
you.
Awesome.
And if anyone can't find it or forgets that, if you go to Blue Tricks Books, it's also linked there. And it's just a ton of fun, and I hope everyone enjoys reading it as much as we're having fun writing it.
So first off, ladies, I want to thank you very much for putting up with me. It's been a blast to get to know you guys, albeit very briefly, and I thank you guys for being a part of this. So, ladies and gentlemen, check out the Kickstarter. It will be launching February 8th. It'll be available in various formats of hardcover, softcover, ebook, and whatever other surprises Deborah has in mind for us all. Definitely take a look. You can hit the button now and register. So definitely go do that. And folks,
Please.
that will
And
do
thank
it.
you so much for having us, Josh. We really
Thank
appreciate it.
you.
Yeah, I hope you guys had fun. I did. I definitely did. It was a cool way to close up the evening, and I apologize for my big mouth with everything else I was doing today. So I'm gonna say that up here. This may not be the last time you see at least this group, although it may not necessarily be these ladies. As more, I'm definitely going to see more of them in come out sometime within the next few weeks, one way or the other, while the Kickstarter is going on. You'll definitely see some more of them there. Beyond all that, folks, tomorrow I have another great guest coming on the show. But for everybody watching, everybody listening, thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. Stay inspired. Keep shining in the dark. And I'll see you guys next time. And I gotta find the button now because the button is.
Thanks again.
Yeah. Hold on a second here. Hold on a second here. I'm trying to end the stream. Come on, stream end. Show chat previews. No, not this. Where? No, not that. Okay, come on. Where are you? There we go.